Hi everyone, I'm Luciano, and I need to get this off my chest because I honestly don't know how I ended up in the middle of such a ridiculous, infuriating family situation. I'm 19, just started college, and I always thought my family would at least pretend to support me. Turns out, that's the kind of optimism that gets you blindsided. It all started on move-in day. My brother, Elliot, had been hyping this up for months. College is going to be amazing, he told me while tossing his brand new laptop on the kitchen table. It wasn't just any laptop. It had all the bells and whistles, the works, and Dad practically beamed as he clapped Elliot on the back. "You're going places," Dad said, grinning like he'd just unlocked some secret of the universe. Then it was my turn. I was honestly nervous, expecting something maybe not as flashy but still decent, maybe a backpack, some dorm essentials. I tore into my box and froze. Inside was a bundle of used pens, a notebook with pages already half filled, and a few scraps of paper with scribbles on them. Mom was standing there, smirking like she'd just pulled off some brilliant trick. "You should be grateful," she said casually, as if that explained why my gift could have been anything from a yard sale clearance to leftover office supplies. Elliot snickered behind her. "Guess some of us aren't meant to get ahead," he said, and my stomach sank. I smiled, nodded, and quietly carried the box up to my room. I didn't say a word, but inside, I felt that familiar heat of being dismissed, minimized, and overlooked. By the time I closed my door, I was already thinking about packing more than just my things. The first few days at college were a blur of new faces, registration, and trying to act normal while carrying that dull, heavy weight of family expectation, or lack thereof. Meanwhile, texts from home started piling in. Elliot sent one asking how I liked my pens. Dad sent a vague, patronizing message about hard work paying off eventually, and Mom, of course, had some helpful advice about being thankful. I didn't respond. I just focused on school, keeping my head down, and trying to make the dorm feel like my own little corner of independence. Then things escalated in ways I didn't see coming. A week in, there was a knock at my door late one afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. Opening it, I nearly dropped my books. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Elliot, standing in my tiny dorm hallway with that same smug expression Mom always wore when she thought she had me figured out. "Luciano, we need to talk," Dad said, crossing his arms. Mom glared like she'd caught me in some unspeakable act, while Elliot leaned against the wall, clearly enjoying the show. "What's this about?" I asked, trying to sound calm even though my chest was pounding. "You've been distant," Mom started, her tone sharp. "We just want to understand why you're acting like this. Why aren't you grateful for what we've given you?" "Grateful? Right. Because the box of used pens was somehow supposed to make me feel appreciated or loved." I took a deep breath, trying to figure out how to explain that it wasn't just about the pens, that it was the pattern, the constant comparison to Elliot, the way I was expected to quietly accept less while he got everything handed to him. But before I could say anything, Dad stepped forward, voice rising slightly. "Look, you're going to need to understand that this is all for your own good. We've done what we could," he said, and I could feel that tension in the air, like a storm just waiting to break. Elliot snickered again, clearly loving every second of this. Mom's smirk deepened. It was one of those moments where I realized they weren't here to talk. They were here to assert control, to make me feel small, and to remind me where I stood in the family hierarchy. And that's when I made my decision. I didn't respond with anger. I didn't beg. I nodded slowly, calmly, and quietly started packing. Not just my things, but everything I had planned to leave behind. I wanted them to watch me step away, to see that I could walk out of the dynamic they thought they controlled. As I zipped my bag, Dad's voice cracked through the tension again. "Luciano, this isn't how families behave. You can't just..." But I didn't finish listening. I kept packing, feeling a strange mix of fear and relief. It was at that moment, as the door closed behind me with a soft but definite click, that I knew this wasn't over. Far from it. And deep down, I knew that what came next would change everything. But I had no idea how far they would go to try and stop me, or what lengths I would have to go to make them understand that I wasn't the one being unreasonable. I ended up staying at a friend's dorm that night. I couldn't face my own room, knowing that the same walls that had felt like my only safe place were now a reminder of how my family treated me. I laid awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of the campus outside, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I'd always known my parents favored Elliot, but seeing it in that concentrated, deliberate way, right in front of me, was something else. A mix of anger, disappointment, and a strange kind of determination started to take root in my chest. The next morning, I didn't go back to my dorm. Instead, I spent the day wandering the campus, thinking through what I'd do next. I had bills to figure out, books to organize, and professors to meet, but all I could think about was the injustice of it all. Elliot had a room full of new gadgets, supplies, and gear that would make his first semester smoother, while I was left with scraps of other people's belongings and my parents' thinly veiled disdain. A few days later, the text started. Not just from my family, but from Elliot specifically. He sent a string of messages. Did you ever get those pens to work? Mom says you're being dramatic. Can't believe you're still sulking about this. I ignored them all, but I could feel the tension building. My parents were clearly egging him on, enjoying the little game of reminding me I was less than their golden child, even if they didn't call it that outright. Then, things escalated in person. About a week after move-in, I was at the cafeteria when I saw them walking toward me. I froze. Dad's posture was stiff, Mom's lips curved into that smug smile I was beginning to recognize as a weapon, and Elliot was trailing slightly behind, arms crossed, clearly waiting to see the show. Luciano, Dad called as he approached. His tone was firm, the kind that made me pause instinctively. I swallowed hard. Hey, what are you doing here? We need answers, Mom said before Dad could even continue. She didn't even try to be polite. Her voice was sharp, commanding, like she was used to people bending to her will without question. Why are you treating us like this? You're in college now. You should be happy and grateful. Instead, you've gone quiet, distant, ignoring messages, and she trailed off, letting the silence hang like a weight. Because I feel like I don't exist to you, I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. Everything is always about Elliot. He gets everything. And I get leftovers. I get pens and scraps of paper. That's not support. That's not guidance. That's making me feel small, like I'm not worth investing in. Elliot snorted. You're dramatizing everything. It's pens, Luciano. Pens. Stop acting like it's the end of the world. Dad's face tightened. Elliot's right. You're blowing this out of proportion. We've given you opportunities, and this is how you respond. Mom tilted her head. You're making this about material things when it's really about your attitude. You need to learn gratitude. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them and make them see what they were doing. But instead, I took a deep breath, keeping calm, keeping measured. It's not just about pens. It's the pattern. It's the favoritism. It's the constant comparison. You treat me like an afterthought, like I'm supposed to be grateful for scraps while Elliot gets everything. That's not gratitude. That's manipulation. They all froze for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. And then, predictably, the rebuttal came. Dad stepped closer, lowering his voice, trying to sound reasonable. Luciano, this isn't manipulation. You're just misreading our intentions. We want the best for you. Elliot's gifts don't mean anything about how we feel about you. You just need to adjust your perspective. Mom nodded, adding her own pressure. You're young. You're in college. This is a learning experience. You need to stop thinking about what you don't have and focus on what's in front of you. But their words didn't land. I felt a surge of clarity. This wasn't about perspective. It was about control. It was about teaching me my place in the family hierarchy, and I had no intention of accepting it. I knew I needed to step away completely. Not just for a few days, not just emotionally, but physically and strategically. That night, back in my friend's dorm again, I started planning. I pulled out a notebook, scribbled lists of things I needed, budgets, long-term goals, everything I could do to make sure I would not just survive but thrive on my own. I didn't just want independence. I wanted leverage, power, and the ability to confront them in a way they couldn't ignore or dismiss. Over the next week, I quietly worked behind the scenes, building my own support network at school, setting up accounts, and connecting with people who could help me. My parents, of course, called repeatedly. Elliot sent more messages, dripping with mockery. Each time, I ignored them, letting the silence do the work that words couldn't. Then came the first major escalation. One evening, I was sitting in the common area, working on a project, when the dorm director came up to me. She looked concerned. Luciano, are you expecting visitors? There's a family here asking to see you. They said it's urgent. I felt my stomach drop. Family? I asked cautiously. Yes. They said it's my responsibility to make sure you get the message, she said, glancing toward the window. I knew, the moment she said it, that my parents weren't just going to ask questions politely. This was going to be a full-blown confrontation. The air in the common room felt suddenly heavier, like the calm before a storm. I didn't panic. I had prepared as best as I could. But a small, icy part of me knew this was where the real challenge would begin. Because this wasn't just about pens anymore. This was about power, about recognition, about proving that I was more than the side character in their little family drama. And then I saw them, through the glass doors, walking up the walkway. Mom's smirk, Dad's rigid posture, Elliot's casual sneer, and I knew the next few minutes were going to decide everything. I took a deep breath as they stepped through the glass doors. Mom's eyes scanned the common room like a predator checking her territory. Dad's jaw was tight, the veins on his neck standing out, and Elliot just leaned against the wall with that smug, superior air that made me want to punch him, but I didn't. I had learned my lesson. Anger was a tool, not a weapon to waste. Luciano, Dad began, voice low but sharp. We need to understand what's going on. Why are you ignoring us? Why are you treating us this way? I didn't move from my chair. I didn't even look up at first, letting the silence stretch. I could feel their frustration mounting. The power they were used to having, the authority they assumed over me, was slipping through their fingers. Dad, Mom, Elliot, I finally said, calm, deliberate. I'm treating you exactly the way you've treated me for years. You've always prioritized Elliot. You've given him everything, gadgets, money, support, while I got leftovers and lectures about being grateful. I've been quiet. I've been polite. I've tried to ignore it. But now I'm done. Mom's lips tightened. Dad's brow furrowed. Elliot let out a soft laugh, like he didn't believe I could actually speak that way to them. I didn't come here to argue. I continued, voice steady. I came here because you needed to understand that your behavior has consequences. You can't just expect me to keep bending to your rules while you ignore my needs. Dad stepped closer, trying to loom over me. Luciano, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. I understand that I've been treated as less than my brother, that my efforts are minimized, and that my opinions don't matter. I understand that your version of support is giving me scraps while Elliot gets the feast. And I understand that if I let you walk over me any longer, nothing will change. Mom gasped, and Elliot's smirk faltered slightly. That small crack in their composure felt satisfying. I had them on edge, exactly where I wanted. Then I laid it out. I'm done living by your rules. I've been making arrangements, quietly, for weeks. I've opened my own bank account. I've applied for scholarships. I've connected with people who actually care about helping me succeed. And I'm telling you now, I'm not dependent on you anymore. Mom's smirk returned, sharper this time, like she was ready to turn the knives on me. You think you can just walk away? You're still in college, Luciano. You need us. I shook my head. I don't need you. I need opportunity, guidance, and support. If you want to help me, you'd start by treating me as an equal. But clearly, that's not going to happen. So I'm going to make my own way. And when I do, you'll realize that the person you've underestimated isn't the one sitting here quietly anymore. Dad's face went red, veins throbbing, while Elliot's smile was gone entirely. Mom's expression, though, was almost the most dangerous. That smirk didn't disappear. It sharpened, as if plotting. They were villains, all of them, and they knew I had just declared war on their control. Over the next few days, I set my plan into motion. I applied for extra shifts at work, saving every penny. I reached out to professors for extra guidance, forming connections they could never influence. I found part-time tutoring gigs that paid well and allowed me to build a network of people who respected me for my effort and intelligence. Slowly, methodically, I began to construct a version of myself they could never dismiss, a version independent of their approval. Meanwhile, their attempts to pressure me only grew. Elliot sent passive-aggressive messages, Dad called multiple times a day, and Mom found ways to leave letters that fell onto my desk with subtle threats or guilt-laden reminders. But I ignored all of it. Every attempt they made to destabilize me only reinforced my determination. One particularly tense moment came when they showed up at a campus event I was helping organize. I had spent weeks preparing for it, a student showcase highlighting community projects. I was proud of my work, and the event was a big deal. I spotted them at the edge of the crowd, trying to blend in, watching me, whispering to each other. I didn't acknowledge them. I let them hover like shadows, trying to remind me of the control they believed they still had. Then came the first real strike of my revenge. I had organized a feature during the showcase, a small exhibition of student achievements with a public acknowledgement of sponsors and supporters. In one section, I highlighted the students who had helped fund and support projects behind the scenes. Names appeared on a sleek digital display. And then, I quietly added something extra, an acknowledgement of all the support I had received from friends, mentors, and faculty who had invested in me because they believed in my potential. And there, in the middle of the list, I added a line under supporters who helped me thrive independently, with a small italic note. Not everyone in my family contributed equally. The effect was immediate. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Dad's eyes widened in disbelief. Elliot's jaw dropped. They had been watching, thinking they could intimidate me into compliance, and suddenly they were confronted with proof that I was thriving despite their attempts to control me. Their faces were priceless, a mix of anger, shock, and helplessness. Later that night, I received a call from Dad. I didn't answer. Mom sent a text, carefully measured, trying to guilt me. "We didn't expect this from you. We only want what's best." I didn't respond. Elliot sent a voice message, dripping with derision. I deleted it unread. It was clear now. They were rattled. They didn't expect me to fight back, to build something on my own, to quietly turn their attempts at control into fuel for my own success. And the best part? They had no idea how far I was willing to go. I had been planning quietly, step by step, constructing a situation where I could prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was capable of more than they ever imagined. But this was only the beginning. I still had leverage to gain, opportunities to create, and moments to turn the tables further. The seeds of my revenge were planted, and now, every interaction, every text, every call from them would serve as a reminder that I wasn't the child they could manipulate any longer. And that's when the next escalation happened. I got a text from Mom with a screenshot attached, a conversation between Elliot and a professor trying to undermine me, paint me as ungrateful and unworthy of certain campus privileges. That was it. That was the line they crossed. And I realized, in that moment, that if I wanted to truly take control, I wasn't just going to succeed. I was going to make them see exactly what they had tried to destroy and how wrong they were. I started planning the next move, carefully, slowly, methodically. Every detail mattered. Every interaction they tried to manipulate me with became a tool for my strategy. And deep down, I knew that when it all came to a head, the result would be unforgettable. The next few weeks were quiet on the surface, but underneath, I was orchestrating everything. I refused to respond to any of their calls or messages. I kept excelling at school, taking on projects that gave me visibility and credibility, and quietly documenting every instance of favoritism, every attempt by my parents or Elliot to undermine me. I knew that if I wanted this to be more than a personal victory, I wanted them to see, finally, that they could not control me. I needed proof. The breakthrough came when the Student Council announced funding opportunities for on-campus initiatives. They required letters of support and demonstrated community backing. I already had that backing in spades: friends, mentors, professors who knew my work ethic and talent. My parents, of course, assumed I would fail without their interference. I submitted my proposal, complete with a polished report showing my independence, achievements, and the contrast between my support network and the hollow support my family offered. A week later, I got the acceptance email, full funding for my project, recognition in the campus newsletter, and a public acknowledgement ceremony. I smiled to myself. This was my stage. This was where I would let them see, in no uncertain terms, what they had underestimated. On the day of the ceremony, I intentionally left the front row of seats empty. The faculty called my name, and I walked onto the stage to accept the award, the entire room applauding. Just as planned, the display behind me highlighted the key supporters who made the project possible. And then, in a subtle but deliberate move, I added one more supporter, my family, who doubted me and underestimated me at every turn. I heard a gasp from the back. I didn't have to look. Mom, Dad, and Elliot had arrived unannounced, trying to witness my supposed failure. Their faces were a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. Mom's smug confidence was gone, replaced by a flicker of panic. Dad's jaw tightened, and Elliot's usual smirk had vanished entirely. They realized, finally, that I had thrived without them, that I had succeeded despite their constant undermining. After the ceremony, they cornered me outside, in the campus courtyard. Dad tried to regain control. "Luciano, this isn't how families behave. You need to." "Stop," I interrupted calmly. "This isn't about behavior. It's about reality. You treated me as less than, you mocked my efforts, you expected me to be grateful for scraps while Elliot got everything handed to him. I've succeeded without your help. I've built a life where I can thrive on my own, and there's nothing you can do to take that away." Mom's face went pale. "Luciano, you're being ridiculous. You're exaggerating." I shook my head. "No, I'm being truthful. And the truth is, you are not the supporters you think you are. You've been villains in my story, and now, the world can see that your influence is irrelevant. Elliot opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't give him the satisfaction. I walked away, head high, confident in the knowledge that I no longer needed any of them. In the weeks that followed, I solidified my independence. I moved fully into my own apartment near campus, funded entirely by my own work and scholarships. I built a network of friends and mentors who genuinely valued me, and I refused every attempt from my parents to insert themselves into my life. Every text, call, or message from them was ignored, documented, and stored, proof of their entitlement and attempts at manipulation. Eventually, I learned that my success had reached home. My parents were furious. Dad called multiple times, demanding explanations, trying to shame me into apologizing. Mom tried subtle guilt trips through letters and messages. Elliot made snide remarks at family gatherings, expecting me to respond. I did none of it. Their frustration was obvious to anyone who saw them. The family dynamic had shifted completely. I was no longer a passive player in their narrative. The final moment of closure came when I received a campus newsletter. My project had been featured as an exemplary initiative, and the article included a quote from me. Support is meaningful when it's earned, not given unequally. True mentorship and belief in someone's potential can make all the difference. I smiled as I read it, knowing exactly who that message was directed at. My parents never apologized. They never acknowledged the favoritism or their behavior, and I didn't forgive them. They were the same villains they had always been, and I had no intention of letting them manipulate me again. The difference now was that I was untouchable, financially, academically, and emotionally. I had rewritten my role in the family story entirely. Today, my relationship with them is minimal. They attempt to reach out, but I keep boundaries firmly in place. Elliot continues to act smug in family settings, but I have learned to observe without reacting, enjoying the knowledge that he will never have the leverage over me that he once did. My parents' attempts at control are meaningless. They have no power here. I succeeded not just in spite of them, but because I refused to let their entitlement define my life. I built a future on my own terms, with people who actually believe in me. And while they remain villains in my story, I am no longer a victim in theirs. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.